very good morning to all of you. I'm Dr. Lakshmi, here to teach you what is microbial growth kinetics and the basics of microbial growth kinetics. Now let's first understand what is microbial growth kinetics. So it's very clear as to what is microbial growth, that is the growth of microbes. Now the growth of microbes is related to two things. One is the number of cells which multiply, the other is the size of the cell. What we'll be dealing with in growth kinetics is in particular to the cell number with time. As we all know, kinetics is anything which is related to with respect to time. So when it is growth kinetics, it is related to as to what is the cell number, how does it vary with time. Now this information is very important to determine the optimal batch times during the fermentation processes which we use for the production of the fermentative products. Now industrially, this study has got a great significance as it helps us to determine the optimal batch time. Now the growth of microbes in a fermenter, for that matter, can be broken down into 4 distinct stages. Now this kinetic curve is a curve which represents the log cell number with respect to time. The variation of this particular parameter with time has been represented over here, and this curve is called as a growth kinetic curve. Now as is distinct from this growth kinetic curve, there are 4 distinct stages which have been identified and studied in depth. These include the lag phase, the exponential phase, and the stationary phase, and finally the death phase. Now let's look into as to what is the lag phase. The first phase of fermentation process or the microbial growth is the lag phase. The cells which have been injected into a new environment take some time to get acclimatized to the new environment. Hence, the multiplication rate of the cells or the growth or increase in the cell number is minimal in this particular phase. Following the lag phase is the exponential phase. This is the second phase where the cells, having adjusted to the new environment, now experience a rapid multiplication rate, and hence the cell growth rate is highest in this phase. Then, does this mean that it would continue incessantly? No. What happens is the cell growth rate after a certain period of time will level off and then become constant. Why does it become constant? It is because of an important phenomena which we call it as the substrate limited inhibition. Now what do we mean by the term substrate limited inhibition? The substrate limited inhibition means that the microbes during the multiplication, they utilize the nutrients which are available in the medium. But as with time, what happens is these nutrient concentration in the medium gets depleted because of the utilization of the microbes. Hence, there is a substrate limitation in the media. And because of this exhaustion of this substrate, what happens is the multiplication of the microbe ceases. Then follows the stationary phase, which is the third phase in the fermentation. Now as the name suggests, during the stationary phase, what happens is the number of cells multiplying equals the number of cells dying. If you look into the graph, what we see is during the stationary phase, there is a parallel plateau to the time axis, which indicates that there is no significant increase in the cell number. So now coming to the final phase, which is the death phase. The fourth phase in the fermentation process, in this phase, the number of cells dying is greater than the number of cells multiplying. So the cause of the death phase is usually that the cells have consumed most of the nutrients in the medium, and therefore there is not enough left for their sustenance. Now let's have a brief recap of the final discussion that we had. It is basically what is microbial growth and what is growth kinetics in particular. Now this growth kinetics, as we have already understood, that it has got four distinct phases: the log or the exponential phase, then we have the stationary phase, and finally the death phase. So having studied these, in the next class we would be dealing with the mathematical aspects pertaining to this microbial growth kinetics and how it varies in the various species. That is, in case of the bacterial species, in the fungal species, what are the aspects which are different. So thank you.